comics have we been reading recently? What would happen if the Avengers were old? Is Doctor Strange still a doctor? And who remembers Zorro? Guys, these are the questions we're going to be asking and thinking about today on this month's episode of Comic Book Ketchup. And, you know, we love doing these. These are just as much just for us as it is anyone. But who it is most for is our patrons. Yes, this is one of those few episodes patrons can watch live. They can comment and interact with us. So if you wanted to be like, hey, your opinions of this are dumb, or lift up your own comic books, you can be on Patreon and let us know, and we can react, and it'll be on the video forever, and we'll never take it off because we're too lazy to do that. So your comments will be immortal. And I'm really excited to dig into these. We're going to be talking about Zorro, Man of the Dead by Sean Murphy, Avengers Twilight by Chip Zdarsky, Doctor Strange by Jed MacKay, and Superman, the Action Comics by Jason Aaron. We'll probably mention a few others too. Naturally, Darkwing Duck's gonna come up. It's gotta. Guys, I'm one of your hosts, Joshua Noel, here with the comic book geek himself, the one who does the weekly pull list, Pastor Will Rose.
Hey,
Will, how's it going?
Hey, Joshua, what is going on? For those of you who are on our YouTube page and watching this, I thought it'd be so funny if I just didn't talk the whole time, just reacted to what Joshua was saying. I could be like the silent Bob of Comic Book Ketchup. You're like, what is that? What is that guy's problem? No, man, it's no secret. I love comics and I love talking these things. And yeah, you mentioned just a few of the people who are on those teams. What I love about comics is the whole creative team of editors and colorers and letters and artists and all kinds of stuff. It takes a full team to put these little 20-page floppy books together, sometimes graphic novels. So I did not know that Sean Murphy did Zorro. All right, you got me thinking, because I do like Sean Murphy's work and art, and he's an outstanding creator.
That's good stuff.
Yeah, that's good. I can't wait to hear what. I have not been reading that, so I can't wait to hear.
I knew as soon as I was like made the decision that I was feeling lazy and I was just going to write one person's name down, that Will was going to immediately say, "Here's all these other people."
Yeah. I credit where credit.
I have to at least include two people, or Will have to tell me.
And Joshua, it's a great time to be a geek. I mean, it's March Madness. The Tar Heels. The Tar Heels are our #1 seed. There's a lot of cartoons like The Bad Batch and Invincible, and we got X-Men '97 this week.
I do like Invincible.
And a new Star Wars trailer for a Star Wars TV show, The Acolyte, dropped today. And it looks absolutely amazing. Disney Star Wars folks can put together a trailer. Now, we'll see what they do with the show and if they can edit that right. But they can put together a sweet trailer, and I love it.
I've still liked most of the Disney shows so far. The Disney Star Wars shows, even the Disney movies. I liked 2 out of 3 of. Or no, I guess you had to include Solo and Rogue One. So then I like 3 out of 5. That's still more than half.
Good odds. If you can hit 3 out of 5 3-pointers in a final
better
four, it's not bad.
That's better than what I give the prequels. So
okay,
there's that. Oh man. Yeah. But we're not here to talk about Star Wars today. Unless we're gonna start bringing up a Alyssa Wong's Star Wars comics, because I got
recommendations.
I haven't started
reading
them, but
I got recommendations for those too. If people are listening and they were like, "Hey, I would love a recommendation of a Star Wars comic," hit me up. I will give you my opinion.
But for now, we're going to jump into our lightning round. We're going to lift up a few that aren't the main topics today and just say what we're geeking out on, what all that is. Hey guys, real quick, I forgot, we mentioned this episode was brought to you by our patrons. It goes live there, then it goes public to YouTube. So big thank you to the patrons. And you know, anyone can smash that like and subscribe button on YouTube so that you're not smashing Will's heart. It's one of the two. It's his heart or the like button. You got to choose. All right. So back to the lightning round.
We need that T-shirt. We need to smash the like button or Will's heart. Either one. Which one would you rather crush?
You must choose.
You must choose.
You must choose this day. That's like Lord of the Rings font.
Yeah, love it.
Oh man. All right, lightning round. Let's do one at a time instead of just dumping them on them. I think that'll might resonate. People might remember some of the names better. of course, I have to lift up
Gosh,
a comic book named Nega Duck. It is Darkwing Duck's arch nemesis.
get my drink.
It started a while back, but I was really hesitant to get into it because Negaduck has always been kind of a two-dimensional villain, right? Like the whole point is he's the opposite of Darkwing Duck. What's his main goal? You know, like some bad guys have like these nuanced things. Mr. Freeze wants to like heal his wife, all these things. What's Negaduck's nuanced goal? He wants to be the worst villain ever and everyone to know how bad he is. Not very nuanced at all. So I was kind of slow to get into this one because I'm like, I don't care that much. And then the Darkwing Duck series ended for now, and I've just been without Darkwing Duck content. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to pick this Negaduck series up that I've been collecting and not reading and finally catch up on it. It's actually been pretty good. It's Negaduck has like villain writer's block. Like he's broke out of his like multi-dimensional prison again. And he's like, all right, I got to do the worst bad thing ever. And he comes up with this plan and he goes to do it. And some other bad guy's already doing it. And he does that a few times. And he's like, wait a minute. I can't think of my own original bad ideas. And, you know, his whole thing is he's the other mirrored dimension of Darkwing Duck. So his whole thing is ego. He has to be the worst villain, the best bad guy. No one else can be as good as him. And yet he can't seem to come up with an idea that other people haven't already come up with. So he's struggling with this writer's block in his ego. And how great of a villain can you really be if you can't come up with your own ideas? And then he comes up with this thought. You know what a real villain is? What true evilness is stealing someone else's idea. That's actually the most bad.
No.
So he's found another villain that he kind of respects.
Is the worst villain thing you can do. Not murder, not abuse. We're talking plagiarism. That's the worst thing you can do.
Yeah.
All right, gotcha.
Obviously. So
all right.
He found another villain who he's like, at least it's not Quacker Jack or some other loser bad guy. You know, he's not as good as me, but I'm going to take his plan. I'm going to make his plan better, and then I'm going to do it. And the plan involves getting the gauntlet from Midas so that he can turn anything into gold. And man, it's just been a lot of fun watching him try to belittle the other bad guys, even though he knows in the back of his head that he can't come up with his own ideas right now, and he's struggling with his writer's block. And it's just goofy fun. Yeah.
But Goofy doesn't show up in it. It's just a different.
Unfortunately.
One
day.
Do you have a Darkwing Duck tattoo? Because if not, you should get one.
I should get. You know what? If we can reach,
you should get a Darkwing
20
Duck neck
patrons, if we can get up to 20 patrons.
Okay, you hear that challenge?
I'll get imposed a Darkwing Duck tattoo.
If we get 20 patrons, then we need to get the Darkwing Duck, and he's going to get it right on his neck. So whenever he's a lawyer and he's defending a case, the judge will see a Darkwing Duck tattoo on his neck.
Well, it stands for justice.
Yeah. Like one side of the neck, Darkwing Duck, the other one, Negaduck. So you're like yin and yang of that.
Oh man,
I love that. Yeah, Darkwing Duck. We'll talk more about Nega villains and heroes later on. I did not know you were going to mention that, but that comes into play when we talk about Action Comics. My lightning round is a new book by Tom King, surprise, and Bilquis Evely, the superstar team around Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, that are making into a movie that was too wordy for Joshua to read, but my favorite book of the year. He has another wordy book with a fantastic art called Helen of Windhorn, and it's set where this guy is interviewing this older woman, almost like at the Titanic. He's sitting down on the table, asking her questions of things that happened in the 1930s and 40s. And she's recalling this story of Helen of Windhorn. And you're like, what is going on? They kind of go back and forth telling the story. And the set pieces for the 1940s is fantastic. The art is amazing. And then it has this kind of fantasy swords and monster things that happens at the end. One issue is out already. It is a fantastic book. I already can't wait for the next one to see what Tom and Evely put together. That team I love so much. I loved them on Supergirl. When they solicited for this book, I was like, can't wait. I don't care what it is or what they're saying. It's going to be a good story. And so far, the first issue was just a banger. So go grab it. Don't wait for the trade, but I can't wait to get it in the trade also, because sometimes you just need it all in one collected volume. So that's it for me.
There are a few writers or artists that anytime I see them, I'm like, that. For example, G. Willow Wilson, Hunger of the Dusk, issue 6 recently came out.
Yeah.
Man, so we go from the Vengol. I can't. What? How do you say that? I don't
I
know.
don't know. It's a fantasy
Bad
name.
guys.
All fantasy
Bad guys.
names
We
and
go from
fantasy
bad guy
stories. I
one
just yeah.
that have been like beyond terrifying, and you can't imagine anything worse. And then they get some insider information, like, oh, we're gonna get these guys, just to find out that they're actually scared of a worse villain coming up, which was like the I think is like the mid season cliffhanger. That was like issue 5. This issue comes around, and we find out it's the Bloodhaven are coming. So
No.
I think we're getting some like dark witch magic kind of stuff in this world that already has like ogres and humans and like um if you've ever played Dead Space, some of the bad guys like the Vangol or whatever, they look similar to some of the like necromorphs and stuff there that I'm like, these are scary looking things and they're scared of this dark magic that's going to be coming. I mean, the only reason it's not a main pick is because it's like felt more like a teaser than like a
Yeah.
sometimes you have to do a little expedition before you get to the real meaty stuff. So that's kind of what it felt like. But I still love it. I still love it. I'm excited for what they're doing. Yeah, you go ahead and do with another one. I got a third, and then I'll wrap this up.
Yeah, I got one more, but I will say I'm collecting that too in the single issues, and I think it's going to read great as a trade. Like I
Oh,
do, I
I'm gonna
do
get the
feel
trade
like
too.
when I get the single issues that I already, I kind of forget what's going on. I have to um, remember what's going on or
Yeah, she's taking her time
refamiliarize
writing it.
myself with the world. But yeah, it's a good story, and it's gonna be a great collected
Hmm.
trade as well. And yeah, that's a good story trope, good story device. That if the enemy that you're scared of is scared of something, then what does that mean for you and being scared of? Are they going to be on your side or not, or can it help you team up? Or if they're scared of it and they, okay, yeah, I love it. I
Yeah,
love when that happened. That little side swipe move in storytelling. That there's a
yeah,
bigger
it's
bad out
great.
there. There's always a bigger fish, as Qui-Gon used to say.
Mm,
Yeah. All right. My so it's just a whole X-Men franchise. In terms
that's
of
fair.
Fall of X, House of X, Fall of this, Rise of that. They're moving towards a big reboot in the X-Men world, and they just kind of Marvel Plus posted some solicits of some creative teams around the main X books. There's going to be an adjectiveless X-Men, Uncanny X-Men, and then maybe an extraordinary X-Men. I don't know. There's
Mm,
another E or another adjective in front of X-Men, and Ryan Stegman, yeah, lots of good folks. So that there's gonna be
mhm.
no shortage. It's definitely gonna be another era of X-Men reboot where there's like 20 titles, and I'm gonna have to choose between a couple of them which one I'm gonna collect. They're gonna get me on those first issues to see which one I'm gonna latch on to. But yeah, another reboot. I'm fine with that. The Krakoan Age was good while it lasted. It fell a little stale for me there at the end. Our friend Andy will bring him back on and
Yeah,
get his ideas about he's a big X-Men fan, and we share that common love in comics, and maybe we'll get back on later on to talk about some of this reboots and new issues are coming out. But yeah, I love the X-Men 97 cartoons coming out, new comics coming out. It's a good time to be an X-Men fan for real.
yeah, yeah. My worst opinion, according to Will, is I've just never really been into the X-Men, but I do have to say,
It's up there. It's up
with
there in your
the
top three opinions.
with
There's a
the
few.
trade coming out, the trade coming out of that Miss Marvel series that they did,
Hmm.
I was wrong. I didn't like it at first. And then reading it all together as one, I didn't get the trade, but I read them all together as one because the trade was
Hmm.
coming out and it just made sense to me. I was like, ooh, when I read it like back to back and I see like she's still able to be her own character, I don't
Yeah.
like the idea of like having to have her in the X Men just because like, I don't want to feel like I have to read X Men. But it was a good story, and I like how they wrestled with her identity, so it was good.
Yeah, I mean, they're not leaning into the Inhumans anymore, so it doesn't make sense to make her
Yeah.
Inhuman. If you want her on the forefront of Marvel heroes and monthly comics coming out, then make her that thing that is the most
Yep.
popular or what they're leaning into. So make
Hmm.
her a mutant, make her. They still haven't revealed of what that means for her or where her X gene is and how that affects the other stuff. Maybe later on, but yeah,
Hmm.
her storytelling, her voice, the way they've captured it, the actress or actor who plays her in the MCU verse
She gets it.
is writing her comic, and they have a new
Hmm.
number one out that they did for that. So a Mutant Menace, I think is her
Hmm.
thing that's coming out. So yeah, I love it. Miss
Yeah,
Marvel's great.
I'm about to pick that up too. All right. So I'm trying to think. Oh, my last. Actually, I covered this in a What's News episode recently. Mortal Terror. It's, Dark Horse Comics. It's really. I think it's great. Go to What's News if you want to hear more about it. It's just the roles of vampires and humans are reversed. The world is ran by vampires. Everyone's a vampire. But there's these little terrorists that are mortals, that are human, who, if they bite you, you could become mortal. Right now, everybody is immortal. We're used to not having to think about death. And all of a sudden, there might be someone out there that could force you to have to deal with your own mortality. Interesting stuff, some deep themes, fun stuff, and of course Dracula is the leader of the human terrorist because of course Dracula is a human. Um, it's a lot of fun. It's good stuff. Final shout out. This isn't even like a real one. I just want to say the trade back is coming out April 2nd for Godzilla Here There Be Dragons. So if you haven't read it, pick it up. It was great. And I want us to support more stuff like that so I can get more stuff like that in my comic book shops. So yeah.
I'll make a plug too. Coming out in April is the trade paperback of I did an interview with Drew Craig with his book.
Yeah.
Battlestar. It's a long title. Why am I forgetting the title of the comic? But go back. I interviewed a creator for that comic on our YouTube page, and the trade paperback for that Battlestar is coming out. Not Battlestar. That's my Star Galactic. Anyway, man, we'll edit. We'll go back and look.
It's good. It's fine.
The Savage Strength of.
Oh, I remember the Savage Strength of when you said that.
Starstorm. The Savage.
That sounds right. That sounds right.
Of Starstorm. Fantastic name, and that trade's coming out in April. Yep.
Nice.
Yeah, cool.
Nice. Anything else for the lightning round, or?
Oh, that's it. That's a long story.
All right. I'm going to start with my first pick because Will has better picks this time, in my opinion. So I wanted him to be the last one. You know, the finale's got to be Superman. We're talking about comic books. But I want to start with probably a weirder one. Maybe not everyone's heard of this go round of storytelling. Maybe Zorro, Man of the Dead by Sean Murphy, and yes, there's plenty of other people who work on it. I believe only issue 1 is out so far. Okay. I've been wanting to talk about this for a while. I almost brought it up in our last Comicbook Ketchup, I think. I'm thinking right. Man, it's so good. I grew up on Zorro. I remember those movies in the theater, maybe not in the theater. I remember them in a house, and when I went to other places, they had like home theaters my aunt had, and we watched up there, and I love Zorro. Zorro and Indiana Jones were like my big heroes as a kid. So kind of seeing Zorro on a comic book, I was like, of course I'm going to pick that up. I have to pick up Zorro. I loved Zorro. I actually had Zorro films on a PSP. So it was like PlayStation when they first had their portable, and I had Zorros, a few different Zorro movies, and anytime we went like on a trip, my family lives in Kentucky. We lived in the Carolinas. So we have this 10-hour trip. I'm watching all the Zorro movie there, and I'm watching all the Zorro's movie coming back. I loved it. So always been a big part of my fandom. Will, were you ever into like the Zorro movies or any of that? They're like super cheesy, but I love them.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like my mom has a very funny story of my uncle, like the superheroes of the day, way back in the day. She had her Pat Boone records, and she came back one time and she found a Z carved in all her Pat Boone records. And it was my uncle who was playing Zorro and took out something and scratched a Z in all her vinyl of Pat Boone. So whenever they get together, they jab each other about all the shenanigans they got to when they were kids. And so when I think of Zorro, I think of my Uncle Pete carving Z's in my mom's Pat Boone records. But yeah, I remember those kind of swashbuckling TV shows, and they had that 1990s movie with who were the actors in that one that was very popular at the time. So yeah, Zorro is like, you know, Spanish Robin Hood, someone who's out there, vigilante, Batman, all those kinds of superheroes are out there causing problems for corrupt governments and criminal gangs and stuff. I think it's a cool
I don't remember what country or town this place takes place in. Guys, you guys got to hang in there with me. Sometimes I just forget stuff. So, and I'm bad with names, and places have names, and that's a problem for me.
My memory.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah. So they're celebrating the legend of Zorro is kind of how this starts off. This like gang who's kind of ruling the town ends up coming up and shutting this down. You can't celebrate this character. We know it's fake, but it doesn't matter that it's fake because you're letting people think of these ideas of rising up, and we don't want anyone to rise up. So we are going to squash the celebration of this hero altogether. He's never been real. We don't care about this. Get rid of this, right? Well, 2 kids lose their parents due to that exact interaction that happened. We see them growing up. The lady, the woman, she was a girl. Now she's a woman. She ends up being the driver for the very man who caused the gang violence that killed her parents, because the whole city's ruled by them. And how else are you going to be safe and secure other than to work for the people who are ruling your area? Well, they're doing a delivery. She's the driver because she's like their most trusted driver now. And who else ends up saving the day at this interaction than what appears to be Zorro, who everyone knows isn't real? Then,
Right.
my favorite twist ending at the end of issue 1. Spoilers, guys. Big spoilers. It's her brother. Her brother grew up and became Zorro, a hero that never existed, but he convinced himself exists, learned sword fighting, and became the hero that they were all celebrating this whole time. So now he is the man of the dead. This is Zorro, who not only isn't real, but the legend's so old, there's no way he's still alive. Well, here he is, stopping the bad guys. And his sister's like, well, shoot, what am I going to do? I can't go back with the bad guys now, but my brother's clearly insane and thinks he's a superhero. So
That's
I love that. I
that's
love
good.
that twist. And for me, it's always fun when it's like the nerds, like when Miss Marvel becomes the hero, the one who worships the hero, or when you see this kid who just worshiped this idea of Zorro and then becomes Zorro. I always love that because I am that kid still. I'm still that little nerd who loves the heroes, and I like the idea that people like me can become the hero. It's
That's
kind of
right.
fun.
One day you can become Luke Skywalker, Joshua.
Maybe anyone else, Zorro, Indiana Jones,
Indeed.
Han
Yeah, yeah.
Solo.
I mean, I think Zorro, I mean, it's like the pulp fiction superhero vigilante who goes out because the cops can't do their job and they're stopping it and doing it on their own. And the legend, you don't know if it's real or not. And the same way goes with Batman. I mean, Zorro's Batman or Batman Zorro. And then also passing the mantle
Mhm.
on, that it doesn't have to be one particular person. You can pass the shield on or the cape or the mask onto the next person who can take on that
Mhm.
identity to keep the legend going. I think is pretty great. And so now that I know that Sean Murphy is doing this, I'm gonna have to pick this up at some
Yeah, the
point. A
art's
couple
great
quick.
too.
Yeah, his art is absolutely fantastic. I love him as a creator. I did meet him at a North Carolina Comic Con a few years back in the before times. Really cool guy before COVID. But a couple books that you might enjoy too, Joshua. Not that you need another graphic novel to buy, but he did one called Punk Rock
Mm.
Jesus.
Oh wait,
And
hold up.
yep,
I'm
Punk Rock
writing that one
Jesus.
down.
Yep. And he shares in that him wrestling with faith and becoming a person of faith that then becomes an atheist or wrestling with what's real or not in religion. He's wrestling with that in Punk Rock Jesus. So yeah, we're open up to all, even though we're people of faith who believe in Christ. There's also that understanding that there are people that have different approaches and we listen with open ears to their experience. So Punk Rock Jesus is definitely a part of that. He also did one called The Wake, which is like a water world kind of environment and these sea creatures. And then another one
Hmm.
he did called Ghost, which is also fantastic. And then he did a Batman story called Batman White Knight, where actually the Joker becomes somewhat cured and then takes on the mantle of Batman, the White Knight, because Batman then becomes insane and Joker-esque. They're kind of a switch of identity, a Freaky Friday thing where the Joker becomes Batman, Batman becomes Joker. I mean, and he's been most famous for that. I know one of our hosts, Kevin um, Schaefer, likes Batman White Knight a lot.
Mm. All right. Well, I got a couple of those written
Yeah,
down.
there you go.
I like his style so far. The writing, the art, it's all great. Um, thinking of like the themes, I like picking your brain of like some of the stuff I think is obvious. Like I think we look at it and we're like, yeah, when people suppress stories, there's a reason they're suppressing the stories. Like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And even the whole, if you believe you can be the hero one day, you can. I'm iffy on that. I think, yeah, for the most part, sure. But sometimes we all do have limits. I don't like the Disney carte blanche version of I can do whatever I believe in. I'm ADHD. No matter how hard I believe in myself, I'm still gonna be ADHD, and that's fine. I just gotta learn how to live with that and use it to my advantage, and not pretend like I can just will it away somehow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I still like the idea. We can all be heroes kind of deal. Like that's cool. But I kind of wanted to just get your take on this whole suppression of story. Um,
Hmm.
is that you still see that today? Like, I mean, outside of just like news, we see like obviously Putin trying to like squash American news stories so that no one knows how evil he is in his own country, which doesn't work.
Yeah.
Do we see that like in the comic book industry or anything like that? Like where we're trying to suppress stories that we think maybe are disadvantaged to
Yeah, I
our own
think it's that
advantages.
that idea or wanting to control the narrative or afraid of someone else's story because it may overshadow or make your story seem worse. Like I just got back from a retreat over the weekend in Charleston to go to the International African American Museum, teaming up with the African American Church. You know, Lutherans, pretty white denomination, teaming up with the St. Paul AME, African American descent. Church going together down to see this museum, and a lot of the content was super heavy and super hard because of the millions of lives that were
Mhm.
destroyed through the transatlantic trade slave um, and so yeah and even the creation of that museum was controversial in Charleston because there was a group of people who didn't want it made because they didn't want
Mhm.
that story to be
Yeah.
told because they felt bad because of that or didn't want it to get out. It was hard as a white man to walk through that
Mhm.
museum, knowing my own heritage and European heritage and even from the South my heritage, walking with people who are African American right beside me looking at that story. And so how do you embrace that? How do you repent from that? How do you tell a different narrative? Yeah, controlling narrative stories, book banning, not wanting people to share their own story and experience is a big part and a big part of politics these days. And it's going to ramp up as we get closer to November as well. And it
Yeah.
happens in comics like all the time. People, you say all the time, and you shared, which I love, is like comics have always been political. Read Captain America #1 in 1939 or whenever it came out, you know? So it's like when people are like, oh man, these comics are so woke these days, I can't believe it. It's like, it's always been that way. And yeah, to control it or say you can't be, people are gonna read what they want to read and invest in what they want to invest in. So don't be scared of it.
Mhm.
Listen, and if it's not for you, you don't have to buy it. You
Yeah.
don't have to listen to it. But here we have open hearts, and open ears to hear stories and to discern for ourselves and in community what that means for us as a group. So yeah,
Mhm.
fantastic question,
Yeah.
and
I
it'll
do.
be here forever because humans are definitely our minds are geared for storytelling. What makes us human is to share a story, make meaning of a story, um, to paint or write a story is what makes us human. And so, when conflicting stories bump up against each other,
Mhm.
that can be hard, but that's what makes us human. So they'll always be around as long as they're humans.
Yeah. Yeah. So a few examples, and then my maybe radical take on this one. Um, First, pirates. Pirates were a big part of this. If you
Mhm.
go through like the golden age of piracy, you had a lot of countries who were hiring privateers to do these things to, the other nations where it's like, we didn't directly attack you, all this, so that they can kind of fashion the story so that they look like the good guys, right? And then
Mm.
all of a sudden they didn't need the privateers anymore. And boom, we're just suddenly declaring you pirates and then taking your heads and then putting them out for people to see how anti pirate we are, even though we're the ones that hired you and put you out there in the first place.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. So
Sounds
there's power
familiar.
in storytelling and
It's familiar.
um, cost people lives, right? And then even right now, state of Florida recently they came to a settlement on the colloquial term, I guess, is the "don't say gay" bill, but it was never "don't say gay," like that just isn't what it was. But whatever.
Right.
Um, and it's funny because both sides now are trying to tell the story and claim that they won with the settlement, right? So originally, what it was part of what it was teachers aren't allowed to teach certain things about gender identity, sexual orientation kind of stuff, and don't mention it to the kids at all, that kind of stuff. And the other side's like, oh well, all this evil's coming from it and blah. And the settlement's kind of the teachers aren't allowed to teach things about it, but they're allowed to say anything about their own personal life if they happen to whatever. And libraries, this was the big one for me. Libraries are kind of going to be at the schools and stuff are going to be a little bit more in charge of their own what's going to be in there. And yeah, that's a big deal. And people are like, oh, we shouldn't ban anything from the library. You say that till you start thinking about it.
Mm.
Trust me. There are some things you do not want in your kid's library. And kind of who articulates what stories are available to our children or not. That's a big question. And I'm glad it's not just going to be thrown in some other bill and it's going to be something they're going to have to tackle on its own separately. Do I trust the state of Florida to do that? Maybe not, but I'm glad it's going to be tackled separately.
Yeah.
And here's my controversial one. When you get to like the Supreme Court and everybody wants to get mad because we don't like some of the decisions they are, everybody's free speech pro until they don't like the speech. And what you have to understand is it's a concept. It's not a we have free speech except for these things we don't like. If you're going to say free speech, that includes people who are Nazis.
Yeah.
Because if you just start discluding things you don't like, it's not truly free speech. And the problem is you can't draw a clear line Because as soon as you do, you're determining certain things are bad or good. And the point of free speech is being open to being wrong. So we just don't get to draw those lines, even if it
Yeah.
includes terrible speech. We can draw where that speech is allowed to happen because we don't want everyone exposed to it necessarily. But free speech is free speech, even free speech I don't like.
Yeah, and I think that's, you're free to say what you want to say and express what you want to express, but you're not free from consequences from what you express. So it's one thing to say something and feel like, oh, it's free speech. There's no consequences for what I say or do. No, you can say whatever you want, but you know what? Your employer might
Mhm.
say, nope, you're fired for saying that, and yeah, you're free to say it, but you're no longer working for this company. I'm free to
Mhm.
do whatever I want to do or preach whatever I want to preach, but I'm also a part of a denomination that sets up boundaries and boundary trainings and workplace boundaries
Mhm.
that say these are ways you act and be and say and articulate for the good of the whole. And so that's where the discernment in the public square of debate can be a part of. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Again, like coming back from the African American Museum, heavy content, but also I was just amazed at what was curated and the story that was being shared. Yeah, with dates and history and words, but also a whole section of art and photographs and pictures and collages. I mean, just also what was how do you share a story? Yeah, through words, but also through poetry and art as well. And that's why I like
Yeah.
comics to bring it
Yeah.
back. Man, all of it together in one
Yeah.
place.
Final thought. And just because I want people to understand how it's not as black and white as you think it is
Hmm.
when it comes to free speech. And this is just, yeah. Let's start with Will and I are both part of a church that is affirming and inclusive of the LGBTQ plus community. And like, we're both proud of that. Um, Here is the thing. A lot of people were really mad, I think it was last year, because they passed this thing that allowed a website creator to deny putting certain things on their website that was pro LGBTQ. And I understand why people were mad, but if you made the law that way and said, no, you have to be able to put whatever anyone requests, you have to put it on there, then you have to start thinking that means you're going to force someone, when someone wants to create a website that's anti LGBTQ and pro violence, that they would have to also create that website. And I think we all agree that we don't want people to be forced to endorse that.
Right.
So again, that's where we draw those lines. You don't get to say, well, we're going to draw this line, but only for things I like or don't like. You have to consider the worst case scenario. What would this law allow or not allow? And that's where you have to go with it. And that's where it gets really complicated. It's not black and white. It's not easy. Of course, I would like if everyone had the same values of me and only put the stuff that I liked out there and we all agreed that I was right. That'd be great. But
Right.
that's not reality, and that's not a good way to grow or be challenged or any of that stuff. So
There you
free
go.
speech is messy and it's complicated, and maybe it gets more complicated with time. We're going to talk about another
Speaking of free
comic.
speech and
Someone who
narratives and controlling
this
the
is one of those
news.
writers. Anything he writes, I'm immediately drawn to. So I'm excited to hear what you have to say. I haven't been able to pick this one up yet, so take it away, Will.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan. People have heard me say DC's Kingdom Come, Dark Knight Returns, Old Man Logan. Well, here is your Old Man Cap. Here is your Kingdom Come Avengers. Set in the not too far future. Heroes have all been kind of suppressed, or the heroes that we know of are older, geriatric. They're in their 80s or 90s. The super soldier serum has run its course through Steve Rogers' veins. He's old man. He's not as strong. He's a little bit more withered. And Tony Stark's son is kind of in charge of this kind of police state. And the news and
What?
controlling everybody's yeah, old Jimmy Stark is in charge of what content's being put out there in the world, and heroes look down on because there was an event similar to like 9/11 or something like that. It's called H Day. The heroes, a lot of people were lost because of what heroes had to do to be Ultron and Hulk together. It's kind of vague what happened, but they call it H Day. Heroes Day, and a lot of heroes, even including Peter Parker, was killed. And so yeah, so the heroes of old are not looked upon as great. And then Steve Rogers has brought on kind of a news program Fox or whatever, and they start talking about, well, maybe Red Skull wasn't that bad. Maybe Red Skull was really the one who was fighting against Hitler in the first place. Oh, new evidence is showing that Red Skull isn't that bad, and that he was the one who really defeated Hitler, not Cap America, not Steve Rogers. And he kind of flips out and was like, this can't happen. Well, an old Luke Cage creates this resistance group called the Defenders, and he's trying to recruit Avengers back into the game to fight against this oppressive kind of government police state. Eventually, issue 1, the kind of climactic thing is that Cap retakes the super soldier serum again. His body adapts and he becomes Captain America again. He's still old in the face, but his body's ripped, and it's time to go out there and change the narrative. Issue 2, he learns really quick. He learns really quick that just an inspirational speech from Captain America isn't going to save the day. He learns the hard way, and so he goes to try to recruit Kamala Khan, who's a little bit older, maybe in her 40s, has some kids, and so.
Khan?
Yeah. So he's
Okay.
like, come be a part of the Avengers. And she's like, I got a family. I can't do this. He tries to recruit different people. Eventually, maybe it's in issue 3. I think it's a 5-issue or 6-issue miniseries. They've just wrapped up issue 4. So either have 1 more or 2 more issues to go. I'm not quite sure. It's a miniseries. Chip Zdarsky and the artist, I have to say, Daniel Acuna, who does the art and the coloring for his own art. It's just like painted art. It is so good. He was on X-Force for a long time. He's been missing in action. Where is this guy? He should be drawing more comics. Well, he's been working on this for a while, and it shows. He's not skimping on any art in this book. And so issue 3, they go to also Tony Stark. Where is he? Well, he's kind of a disembodied, just a headless in suspended animation down in the raft thing. They're keeping him on ice, basically, just his head on ice. And so Cap was like, I gotta go break him out, gotta go get my friend Tony out of captivity from his own son down there. And so they go to the raft, they break him out, but the cliffhanger at the end of 3 is that, or towards the end, Kamala Khan does show up when you least expect it. Her appearance of helping save the day, you're like, oh my gosh, this is so epic. And then at the last page, he's like, it looks like all is lost. Steve's getting ready to lose, and all of a sudden lightning comes down from heaven and strikes Jimmy Stark, and you're like, oh, I know who that is. And then the last page is a big, picture of Thor going, I came, Avengers assemble, let's do this. So issue 4, you have kind of the big 3 back together, along with this kind of a new Bullseye Hawkeye person who she was on the police state but couldn't kill somebody who was unarmed, but she's a trick shooter, bow and arrow, sniper rifle. So Cap keeps calling her the new Hawkeye. She's like, I'm not the new Hawkeye, I'm Bullseye. So anyway, they so they're all together in the 4th issue, and then it comes to realize that Red Skull, this is spoilers, but anyway, you're listening to a comic book show. Red Skull's behind it all as the guy who is Jarvis's brother. They keep calling Jarvis his brother, who's really kind of behind manipulating Jimmy Stark. So it's really Red Skull behind this all along, controlling the narrative. It's kind of on the nose what's going on.
So it's really a Captain America comic, is what I mean.
It's really Captain America, and it's old man
Cap here, but it's
Dark Knight Return. Yeah, old man Cap, Dark Knight Returns. Comic, but it's Avengers Twilight. They're in the twilight of their career, and they're bringing everybody back together as symbol. Can't wait to see how this ends, what the ramifications are next generation. I couldn't love this more. Again, another comic. I'm collecting the single issues that will look great on my shelf as a collective trade at some point.
Oh yeah, man, I've been wanting it. Excited. I'm not calling my comic book store lazy, but I am saying I haven't been getting my pull list. And it's not all their. Oh, that's so cool. It's not all their fault. So the way my comics are set up, I think I've probably explained this before.
Yeah.
They go into the comic book shop at Charlotte, which also owns the comic book shop in Matthews, and they bring the ones from Charlotte to Matthews every so often, because Matthews doesn't get all comics. It only gets like the big ones, because it's also like a drinking place and a place to play card games, and it's like a little bit of everything.
Heaven.
I hate driving into Charlotte, so they just bring my pull list to Matthew every so often, which is my fault, because I could just go to Charlotte where all my pulls are. So I'm not blaming them, because I could just go to Charlotte where all my pools are. But it's been a while since I brought my pool list over, and I'm still just going to the Matthews waiting on it.
It'll be
Oh
worth it.
man,
It'll be
yeah,
worth the wait.
yeah. I'm excited for this one though, and man, there's just so many good comics out right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as far as like how to come back out of retirement or to stay retired or all that, like, uh, how do you think of those things? Like, what is
Yeah.
like I feel like in church context, it's difficult too because you do have um probably a lot of situations like I know in my own upbringing a lot of churches have these older pastors and it's like when do they know to step down to let the younger ministers take over and then they're going to make all these dumb decisions and you're caring for people's lives so letting young people make dumb decisions is kind of like it's kind of a little risky and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden the pandemic happens. um some of the presidential election stuff's been happening. It's like, ooh, we really need someone who's been through it a little bit to kind of guide us. So it's like, what? How do we know when to retire? When to how do you navigate these kind of ideas of like the
Man.
twilight of your career?
Yeah, I love that. So there's maybe there's a time when you are the center or you are the main voice, but there's also comes a time when you center other people and let other voices be heard and when to check your ego and to pass the mantle on to the next generation and then trust that they will make mistakes and they will do things along the way, but yet it's theirs to own and to grow into. So yeah, I'm thinking about that. I've been in ministry for going on 24, 25 years now. And so, yeah, I'm not a part of the young adult group anymore, but there are those who are coming up that I need to pass on and lift their voices. Same with sports. When you know when to hang it up. Michael Jordan, he retired once,
Mm.
retired twice, then came back and played for the Wizards, and
Yeah,
that was fun. That was fun, but he didn't win a championship with the Wizards.
yeah.
One of my favorite surfers of all time, Kelly Slater, around the same age as him, still surfing on tour, still surfing competitively. He probably should have retired 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 years ago, but he's still competitive in some of these contests. And I'm wondering when he's going to officially retire to give some
Hmm.
younger kid the spot on tour that he has, rather than holding on to these spots. So yeah, what is it? We have our
Hmm.
own campus pastor who's retiring here in August, and we're in the interview process, and most of the people we're interviewing are a lot younger than him, but yet he has the experience and
Hmm.
the knowledge of how things work. And it's going to be hard, that history and knowledge is going to be hard. That learning curve is going to be tough for a few years to kind of figure out what's going on. Or the new chemistry in our church, but that's all part of kind of growing and passing on to the next generation. And I don't think this election was the rematch we all wanted. I think we wanted
Hmm.
somebody new and young and
Yeah, I would say the
both.
presidential election in America. Yeah.
Yeah, like what is this? This isn't the rematch we wanted. But like what is the next stage? How do you pass it on and mentor others so that you can let go? And that's hard. That's
Yeah,
hard for our egos.
yeah. What's
How
funny?
do you ride off into the sunset on a W, on a win? And sometimes you're like, yeah. Sometimes you fade
Mhm.
away. It's not always
Yeah.
you retire with a walk off home run or a last second 3-pointer.
Yeah. What's funny is like that the presidential election really is like the easiest place to see this right now. I feel like, and we're doing our primary political series on here, and this will probably come up again. But it's interesting because you have the people on the Democratic side that are, well, Joe Biden has to run again, or else we'll end up with Donald Trump. So yeah, we'd rather have a younger person, but we have to win this. And then you have the Donald Trump people who are like, well, yeah, Ron DeSantis would have been great, whatever, but we can't afford to lose to Joe Biden again. So it's like they have this just so cause of we have to have these ancient people running because they're the only one who can beat the other ancient person. Like it's like, guys, come on. What if we just all moved on
Yeah.
from all
Yeah.
of this?
Yeah, and
It's hard.
this comic can kind of be on the nose when in terms of police state and who's controlling the news and who are the heroes, who's not. I mean, it's not subtle in the message that it's giving, but I think it's also, yeah, there's nostalgia with the characters we love, but then who are the next heroes that are coming behind them, whether it's Kamala Khan or others. They're lifting up some heroes that are on their Avengers team that maybe could step up and see what's right. And so I'll be curious to see how this ends, if there's a new Avengers
Yeah.
team or who they pass it on to, if there's redemption in Jimmy Stark or not. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, and what's interesting is like in the regular comic book timeline, I do feel like you have seen a lot of like Kamala Harris kind of taking the reins. She's a relatively newer hero, but when
Hmm.
I read some of her like speeches and stuff that she gives to the Avengers or when she says stuff, I'm like, no, this is actually what it means to be here. Like this is the heart of why we're behind these teams in the first place. And it's kind of like I love Captain America, But Captain America doesn't have it right now. Like when I'm reading the comics and stuff, I'm like, that's a cool speech. Heard it before. And then Kamala Harris comes on, and whoever's writing her, like you get that speech, and you're like, oh no, this is why it matters.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah. So you can kind of see that happening, whether it's intentional or not. You see it happening in the main timeline right now. Speaking of the main timeline of Marvel, Doctor Strange by Jed MacKay.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm in love. I am in love. We haven't talked about it because it's, for me, it's hard to pick a comic that's like such an ongoing series because I'm like, oh, I'll talk about it later. Oh, I'll talk about it later. You know, like a lot of my picks are usually the short mini series. You know, I'll do like that Miss Marvel, Hunger in the Dusk. I know it's going to be finished. It's going to be its own single story. It's harder for me to pick something that's going to be this long running thing. But man, and I usually, even in my pull list, I usually don't even pick stuff that I know is going to be too long because I'm like, eventually I'm going to lose patience. I'm going to miss an issue and I'm just not going to read it all. This one has just been so good that I have to keep up. Doctor Strange by Jed MacKay and a bunch of other people. So
who's the artist? Is this
I'm loving it.
is
I don't
that
know.
Perry, Pascal Perry? I don't know.
That's a great question.
Like, yep.
But
I'll look it up.
if you look up Doctor Strange 2023 Jed MacKay, you'll find these issues. I believe we are on 14. We're about to get 15. Man, it's been a lot of fun. You know, the first few issues, you have him with Clea, who has recently made an appearance in the MCU after the end of Multiverse of Madness. And, you know, she's kind of related to Dormammu and all this, like, the dark wizarding world stuff. So it's interesting having her now married to Dr. Stephen Strange and them kind of dealing with their own relationship, also dealing with the magical world, and how they both have very different takes, you know, where he will go in and like, okay, let's do some diplomacy. Let's figure out how we can all get along and how do we create peace. And she goes, this guy's bad, kill him. You know, so it's seeing their two styles next by next and them figuring out the relationship. And you also just have like the first few issues just really establishing who Doctor Strange's character is. Then we get this turn. They go visit a wedding that's part of her family, which, you know, the bad guys. Leah's families are just the bad guys. And all hell breaks loose, pretty much literally. We end up seeing this whole other timeline where there's an evil Doctor Strange who isn't from another dimension, it's from their own dimension, brought to you thanks to the Vishanti because they had to pull him out of his time and have him conduct a war against the other magical group that's had the constant war. And yes, some of it's very on the nose, what's going on in the Middle East kind of stuff. And you're like, okay, yep, wars never end. We get it. Anyway, and he's been at this for thousands of years so that they could just reach a settlement and say, we no longer need you, you know? And at this point, he's calling himself, I forget, it's like, he's no longer going by Doctor. He's like Captain Strange or Warlord Strange or something. And they even spend a whole comic showing you how he gets there. And man, every step along the way, you're like, yeah, that's justified, all the way up to the end. And you're like, wait a minute, that's too far. And you're like, oh, but you see how he got there. And you're like, oh, yeah, right. Like, of course, we're going to kill all these people because they're just going to regenerate. And we're going to have to do it because all these other people who won't regenerate will never be born. It's like, okay, yeah, you're saving lives. Each decision he makes, he's saving lives, even if he's killing people. Then you're just like, oh, now he's just a murderer. Now he's just a warlord. And what do you do with this? And then he's confronting the regular Doctor Strange. He's going to take his whole world away. And because he's just pissed off that the Vishanti used him and threw him away. And of course, like I feel like he's pretty justified in that, right? Like they have you fight a war for thousands of years because we don't need you anymore. He's pissed off. So he's like, he thinks that regular Doctor Strange, who hasn't been doing this for thousands of years, is weak. His old version of himself. He's going to take his old version out. And you're like, okay, we've seen all this before. Good guy Strange is going to come and win, right? The big twist that really sold me over to, this is just one of my favorite runs. Yeah, Doctor Strange doesn't defeat him. He captures him and starts rehabilitating him and starts healing him. Because you know what? That's what a doctor does. A doctor doesn't fight and find a way to beat the warlord. He doesn't make his friends and figure out a clever plan to win. He figures out a clever plan to heal. And then what does it look to heal past war? And you're like, oh, man, that got deep. It got good. And it really reminds you that, yeah, Doctor Strange is a doctor. It's something that you kind of forget a lot of the time. You think of him as just a magician or someone who's like a cool fighting superhero. And it's like, oh, nope. He said, even though this guy killed thousands of people, my job isn't to pass judgment. My job isn't to kill, isn't to win. My job is to heal. And man, just
Wow.
thinking of that through like a Christian lens, thinking of it like my own role in the world, and where do I draw the line of healing and passing judgment on others, and that kind of, and I'm like, oh yeah, I love the themes. I love what they're doing. I'm actually just, I don't know where this comic could possibly go next, and I'm actually really excited. Like, usually some stuff I pick up, I'm like, I like the writer, I like this or this. No, this is just the story. I don't recognize Jed MacKay. I probably read other of his stuff,
Oh,
but
he's
it's
he's Moon
truly
Knight,
just the
dude. He's
story.
doing a lot of Moon Knight. He's doing a
Oh,
lot of
is it
Moon
like
Knight.
current Moon Knight stuff? Is that what
Yeah.
I'm reading from him?
Mhm,
Okay,
mhm.
but yeah, the story on its own, it's fascinating. It's phenomenal. And I don't know how everybody feels about like the death penalty kind of stuff. I feel like I'm probably a little bit more on the right side of this than a lot of people. I say right side. I don't mean correct side. you know. But
Into the
yeah, 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 yeah. But yeah, a doctor's job is to heal. I can definitely agree with that. I think a Christian's job is to heal.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of like, man, this is challenging stuff. What do we do in the face of war? And when someone's been scarred to the point that they're an evil warlord, like, I don't know, I'm gonna get really blunt here, like Putin. And I'm asking myself this question, especially because I work with people from Ukraine who are in our country because of what's going on in Ukraine right now. And I'm going,
Mm.
man, if I was face to face with Putin, would I want to heal him? I don't think I would. And this
Restorative
comic's challenged
justice.
me to my core, man. I'm like, oh, I might
Yeah.
need to work on myself a little bit. It's because I couldn't do
Yeah.
that.
Are we just doing punishment or like just put him in prison, or is there restorative justice to try to bring healing,
Mhm.
restoration, and reconciliation too? That's a lot harder work. Again, coming off the African American Museum and talking about reconciliation and healing from the injustices. That's a lot harder work than just punishment. But yeah, like the Jed MacKay is the current writer on Avengers right now. A lot of Moon Knight stuff.
Really?
He's also going to be on this one of the creative teams on one of the main X-Men books coming up. Don't know remember which one, but he's coming
Okay.
on board with that. So Jed MacKay is all over Marvel right now. And then yeah, Pascal Ferry is one of the artists on this, and then Annie McDonald, great. And then the colors, man, the great are just
Oh
what
yeah.
makes it
It's
look at the
trippy.
colors
It's really
or
trippy beyond belief.
yeah, if you don't have like a really trippy Doctor Strange book, then what are you doing?
Yeah.
A lot of colors, a lot of mystical things happen. But what a good character in the mystic arcs of comics. And again, yeah, he's great in the MCU, and they do a lot of good stuff with him. But he really kind of, you know, there's Doctor Strange's home is in comics because you can really get crazy and play with colors and images and art on the page. Yeah,
Oh
good
yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. The Vishanti and he even what's sorry. He in this he makes a deal with, I forget what they are, but like the evil gods basically, and deal with
Hmm.
them. And you think he's doing the evil so he gets enough power that he can win. And he's just getting enough power, knowing that he's corrupting himself, knowing that he's putting himself in danger, just to stall for enough time so he can capture the guy and heal him. And you're like, wait a minute. So not only are you finding a way to heal someone who, according to everyone else, is beyond redemption, and even me as a reader, I'm like, I don't know if I feel like he's redeemable. Not only are
Yeah,
you willing to, you're also willing to put your own life at risk to try and heal him. Man, that's got some Easter tones to it.
there you go. There you go.
Oh man. All
Oh,
right.
we ready to talk about the
Yes,
OG?
we
Oh,
got one more.
OG. Yeah, if you're out there looking, folks, my friend, Joshua's friend, Ryan Does, has a podcast called Superpower Happy Hour, and our friend Trip Fuller and I and Ryan talked about Action Comics #1, going way back to the beginning, the game changer, way back before they were even superhero comics, the one who changed it all. Action Comics #1, Superman, the debut of Superman. Well, here we're going to talk about Action Comics 1061. So 1060 issues later, here we are, Jason Aaron, and what's his name? Tim. John Tim is the artist. John Tim did some art with Harley Quinn, and so he teamed up with Jason Aaron to do this. And another plug, way back when in the COVID times, Trip Fuller and I interviewed Jason Aaron as kind of charity for local comic book stores, and talked to him about his run on Thor, legendary run on Thor. But we also asked him in the interview, what would you, if there's a character out there you wanted to write and create, what would it be? And he's like, I don't think you're a real comic book creator unless you've done something on Superman, the original one. We're like, oh, maybe that'll happen one day. Guess what, folks? Here it is. He's doing it. He called it 3 years ago. We were like, here it is. And so he's now writing Action Comics. This is a Bizarro story. Bizarro. So Superman has his rogue gallery. Bizarro is one of my favorite Superman villains or nemesis because it's basically Nega Superman. All right. Everything that Superman would do, you have Nega Superman with Bizarro. He talks weird. He talks
Nega Duck?
backwards. Yeah, Nega Duck. You have
Nega Duck,
Nega
Nega
Soups.
Superman.
Nega Soups. And so everything he says, you have to read in a way that it's like opposite day. So if he's on the cover of one of these comics that says live, he's really saying die. If he goes, I love you, Superman, he's really saying, I hate you, Superman. If he says, I hate this, he's saying, I love it. So you have to think in your mind that he's speaking backwards because everything this guy does is backwards compared to his S is facing in the wrong direction, right? He's from Bizarro World. Well, one of the Superman's weaknesses, sorry, I'm getting ready to cough. Hold on. One of Superman's weaknesses is not only kryptonite, but also magic. He has like this aversion to magic. He doesn't have a lot of power over it and messes with him, whatever. Well, wouldn't you think? Bizarro, he goes to this world that's all magic, all wizards, and they're like, we're going to defeat him with magic. You're like, oh, this is Superman. Maybe magic or no. Since Superman, the original one, has a hard time with magic, guess what? Bizarro like soaks it up like an energy drink. He's just like, yeah, give it to me. And he starts chugging
What?
magic and it absorbs all this magic into him. So he becomes this super magical being because he's Bizarro Man, Bizarro Superman,
Nice.
Bizarro. And so he comes to Earth and that's the threat. And so there's this Superman alludes to, they're not really enemies. It's just like Superman feels sorry for Bizarro. He's always like a pity, like, dude, I need to help you. I know what's going on. He's like, why are you doing this? Don't fight me. I can help you. And Bizarro's freaking out because he's looking for his family. He's just throwing all this magic at Superman. And because of this magic overload, the entire world kind of gets infected with this Bizarro virus. So it's almost like a zombie virus, like Lois Lane.
Oh.
And all of the world and Metropolis become like Bizarro people.
Oh.
Almost like zombies. And at some point, Superman has to go and to like Gotham and ask the other, of course, Justice League for help, Batman and different stuff. There's this worldwide crisis. So who does Superman eventually turn to? Well, on Bizarro World, not only do you have backwards Superman, you also have like backwards Batman, even backwards Joker. So he's like, I need to go to the most sane person that's ever existed, and that's Bizarro Joker. Not the most insane. In our world, he's the most insane. So he goes Bizarro Joker. He goes to Bizarro Joker, who's the most
I love
sane
this.
person he could ever think of to help him. So Bizarro Joker, again, the most sane person, is helping him, and it gets really trippy at the end. The last one, I will admit, it didn't land well with. It's only a 3-issue arc. It's already done. Just came out last week. It's a 3 comics arc, and they're in this mind battle between Bizarro and Superman are fighting in Superman's mind for some reason. And it's like this battle of the wills. And eventually Superman wins because he does. He has Bizarro Joker's help. And you're like, where is Bizarro? Where did he go? Superman looks in the mirror or in a window and sees like a reflection of Bizarro. And so is Bizarro gone or is it just inside Clark Kent's ego now, or psyche or soul? So is Bizarro trapped within Superman? That's kind of the cliffhanger when it comes to that. Neat story, a lot of words. Man, there's a lot of words. If you thought Tom King wrote a lot of words, Jason Aaron went crazy on this one. He had 3 issues, and I guess he thought he was getting 6 issues, and he only got 3, so he had to fit it all in to 3 issues. So yeah, it's a good little quick story arc. It's under this banner. Action Comics is Superman Superstars, and so I think they're having a team of different people writing for Action Comics. Next is I think is like a Brainiac story that another creative team is doing.
I do like Brainiac.
Yeah, I like Brainiac too, but yeah, I love a good Bizarro story, and Jason Aaron did it. So yeah, highly recommend. Only 3 issues, lots of fun.
Yeah, I do really like the art in this panel that I pulled up here. I just yeah, art's nice. Good art.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about art to say anything other than good art. Me like.
I know what I like. You talk like Bizarro. Me don't like
art.
Comic art. So do you not like it or do you like it? I'm Bizarro.
Oh man. No. That's always interesting stuff. I always love a good like opposite hero who just like
Mhm.
and then Bizarro Joker. Is this his first appearance, or is this like has he
I
been a
guess
thing
I didn't know
before?
that was a thing either. I
Yeah, I
didn't know.
didn't
I have to
know
go back
about
and
that.
look. I did not realize that was a thing. I don't know if it's his first appearance. There, good question. Maybe I had the first appearance of Bizarro Joker. I don't think so. It sounded like that there's some history there and has shown up in other places. I mean, Superman's been around a long time. So my guess is they had
Yeah,
success with Bizarro, and they play with that in other areas of the DC universe.
yeah, that's fun though. It makes a lot of sense that they're if everyone's opposite,
Yeah. I mean,
that
think
would
of
be
Bizarro
Joker's
Will.
opposite.
Bizarro Will has long blonde hair, hates surfing, hates fried chicken, eats lots of
Oh
vegetables and
man.
kale salad.
Oh man, just think Bizarro Josh is out there with some great opinions. Doesn't like
Great
Darkwing Duck or
opinions.
Last Jedi.
He loves Empire Strikes Back and Luke Skywalker, and agrees with
That is
Will when
wild.
it comes to Star Wars.
As he should. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Bizarro
Oh man,
Josh, Bizarro Will.
and I do
We need to
think
get that. We need to write
sometimes.
that comic book, Joshua. That needs to happen.
Well, and yeah,
Christian
sometimes.
Ashley is not a Southern Baptist, but a Lutheran
Yeah,
who,
yeah, yeah. We're both Southern Baptist in this
that's
world.
right. We're both Southern Baptist, and Christian Ashley is the progressive Christian who believes in a billion
Yeah,
age, year,
yeah. In fact, I don't even think he can be in the Lutheran Church. I think he might be too progressive.
That's
He's
right.
way out there.
Ooh, UCC. Yeah, he's UCC.
Oh man. Good stuff though. And I do think like sometimes thinking of our opposite
Mm.
really can like it can help challenge you. It's a fun story device and it makes you
Yeah. Oh,
really
again,
critique
like
what you love and don't love about your heroes.
yeah, and I think that goes to show in the story arcs that Superman can't use his strength. He has to use his mind to beat Bizarro. He can't just punch for punch because they're basically the same person in strength and superpowers. So he has to use his mind. So he goes to Bizarro Joker so that he can get insight to how he can beat this in his mind. And that's what he really needs. So again, a great
Mm.
Superman story is not just him like laser beaming and cold breath and using
Yeah.
strength, but how to use his wit and mind with that too.
Man, good stuff. Good stuff. All right. You have any other themes or thoughts you want to lift up with this one?
No, that's good. Go check it out. Quick read.
All right then. Well, with that, we can go ahead and start doing our wrap up here. I'm gonna do it like a what's news episode of all the comics and stuff that we mentioned today. If you had to pick one as like your main recommendation, what would you pick?
Oh, it's got to be Avengers Twilight. It's so good.
All
It's
right.
so good. Yeah, yeah, that's good. There's a lot of going on. We all the ones we shared were really good, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna go check out that Zorro for sure because I like Sean Murphy.
Yeah.
But Twilight is
Yeah.
Avengers Twilight.
Yeah.
Very
I
good.
love I think I love everything that I've read that we mentioned today. I love, and the ones we haven't, I'm convinced that I would love. So it is hard to pick one because even though I briefly mentioned like Immortal Terror was good, Godzilla Here There Be Dragons was good, Zorro was good. I'm still gonna go with Hunger in the Dusk. It's just my favorite comic right now. It is
Yeah.
hard to keep up with because there's such a long pause between comics, but that's just its own fantasy world. It's for me, it has a unique enough energy that I'm like, if they ever made this into like a movie or something, I can see it being like the next Game of Thrones or something like that.
Yeah.
Not Game of Thrones, but something like that. It could
Yeah.
have its
A
whole
cartoon,
own
like
fan base.
animated
It's so good.
series. Animated series would be great.
Yeah, anything. It's just such a good story. I love it, and I love everything G. Willow Wilson does for the most part. So I might be a little biased, but it's good. It's good stuff. All right. So with that, I just want to thank our patrons. You guys are so cool. Thank you for supporting us, for making this show possible, Comicbook Ketchup, and thank you everyone on YouTube who smashed that like and subscribe button. You're really helping Will's heart when you do that.
And if you've listened all the way to the end of this and you're just now listening to the very end of this episode, if you shoot me a DM and talk about Bizarro Will, I'll send you and mail you a free comic.
Yeah. And guys, thank you so much. Remember to rate and review our show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or on Captivate. And of course, we also want to remind you all, we're all the chosen people, a geekdom of priest.